is sentiment and an emotional attachment
Yeah.
the starting point to becoming an archivist?
I think more than sentiment, no, it's childhood. It's emotions when you feel as a child when you see cinema. The emotion which you've gone through first time when you go to a big movie hall and you see larger than life, those images, and emotions come from those great actors who perform that. And that emotion strikes a big chord with all of us. And I think whenever I've looked at cinema, or whether it was objects or whether I almost transcended to be like a child. You can only be an archivist if you have that feeling as a child looking after your stuff.
I saw Amar Akbar Antony,
Yeah.
thanks to you, on the big screen as an adult. I saw CID and Guide, and I just saw Manthan.
Yeah.
I saw all these three movies, and irrespective of what the movies were about, what their stories were, what their themes were, I teared up.
Yeah, it would be the same for me.
So we are in the heart of the Film Heritage Foundation, right? Is
Yeah,
that a good way to describe this place?
When you really look after heritage, or when you look after film heritage, it's almost divided into many parts. One is, of course, the film part of it, the celluloid part of it. The other is the paper photograph, lobby cards, posters, what we call memorabilia. And this particular space has a lot of the memorabilia. But our films are looked after in another space, which is in New Bombay. And then we have another space in Andheri. And now we are going to be moving into a space in Ballet Pier, which is
all of this will be integrated.
all of this, and that will be a public space. We'll have a public library where you can access, where you can come. There's no film library in Mumbai. So it will be a space of its kind. And I think the whole essence is for people to experience that what preservation and restoration is. So here we do repair films.
Right.
And I mean, if you can see some of the conservators, they're repairing films. But the restorations are done in labs.
Right.
And most of our restorations are done between Bologna in Italy and Prasad in
Chennai.
Yeah.
So, but what is the difference between repairing and restoration?
So, we will have to go there.
Yeah.
So when you restore a film, how do you begin restoration? Most of the films are on different formats of celluloid. And this is a 35mm print of If Annie Gives It Those Ones, which was directed by Pradeep Kishan.
Yes.
And this is our next restoration.
This is where Arundhati Roy...
Yeah, absolutely. And Shah Rukh also started his career here. And many of the great actors from Delhi theatre.
Yeah.
Now, what we are doing is that in order to restore a film, and before we digitize, you have to physically repair the celluloid film. That means Praveen is, who's our conservator, he's looking at the images.
Hi, Praveen.
He's not only cleaning the actual 35mm print. So this is a print from a 16mm negative. That means the film was shot on a 16mm.
Got it.
And he's almost looking at the frames. He's looking at if there are any repairs to be done, if the sprockets, you can see the sprockets, if they are damaged. So it's not only cleaning the print before it goes to scanning, but also repairing. And once he sort of checks it and he makes a report, so we have to make a report on the length, on the fact that if there are damages, how should it be treated on a scanner. So once it's repaired, then it goes to scanning. And then the digital side comes into the fray. But the first important step is to actually restore the actual negative or the print.
And this is a physical process.
Physical, tedious, you can see all over. Each and every, joints or sprockets or, how you handle negatives. It has to be handled. Negatives are handled on a velvet kind of cloth. So there are not enough scratches. It's a lot of care is taken with solutions and thing. It's almost tedious, and it takes a long time. Before 1951, we had nitrate. Now we had acetate
Silver
films.
nitrate.
Yeah. That's why it was called...
You see, I have seen Celluloid Man. And if you haven't seen Celluloid Man, and if you love cinema, you should see it.
Yeah, I mean,
big shout out to Shivendra's documentary film, which is a
Right.
tribute to
To
India's
Beacon.
original
Yeah.
film archivist, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. And the other way was that it was a journey. So I never, the interesting part was that I never set it out to make a film. I went and was very disturbed about how things were being preserved, how things were getting lost. And PK Nair was the founder of the NFAI.
Yeah.
So I thought that if I can shoot a little interview, and in those days the NDTV had a lot of my batchmates, because I was from Doon and Stephens, the two big criteria.
Yeah, to get into NDTV.
So I thought
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah. So I thought I could shoot a little bit of footage and sort of pass it on to friends and to get awareness. And then I started traveling all over India, trying to really figure out what's happened to our heritage. And we realized that almost 60 to 70% of our cinematic heritage is lost. And that led to the film Celluloid Man, which PK Nair had right through the film, he kept asking me, that is the film about, I hope it's not about me, it's about the heritage. But it was such a fascinating story, because what I was dealing in Celluloid Man was his journey of traveling around India was also becoming my journey. And somewhere I felt that I must do something. And it was a very difficult decision, Anuradha. I was almost shooting 4 commercials a month, having shot over 1,000 commercials now. And at that point, in the peak of your career, to almost move parallelly to starting a foundation in 2014. And then to start looking at, with absolutely no infrastructure. There were no conservators, there were no backers.
Before we, shift out of the space and let them go back to work, so to do this work, you've got to be interested and passionate about cinema.
No, you got to be mad.
Shivendra, in order to archive the past, you've got to preserve it. In order to want to preserve it, you've got to value it. How did this sense of value for the past and therefore the heritage and culture that it stands for, how did that happen for you?
Well, there's always a saying that unless you know where you came from, you will not know where to go. And I think that essence of as a human being, as a civilization, as something which is mostly all happened in the past, and look at the way we live around the great architecture and the great sense of the past which is surrounded, whether I was living in Delhi or Lucknow or Agra. The only way you can move forward is that unless you preserve that past. And I was born in that heritage. I had 1,000 years of heritage.
In terms of your family?
My family tradition.
Yeah.
And even when I was trying to look at cinema, which I was obsessed with as a child and was trying to preserve it. And, as a child, I was a collector of tickets and posters and anything I could get my hands off, even autographs. And I still remember how crazy I was for collecting autographs of stars. But when it comes to this modern day invention, people couldn't, in the beginning, equate it with as important to the culture. And I think one of the things which film suffered deeply was that it was always looked as an entertainment. It was never looked as an art form. I think people forget that when they look at celluloid, that they think it's all Bollywood cinema or it's cinema of Rajnikant, Kamal Haasan, but it's much more to that. It's almost the 20th century.
Yeah. So newsreels have documented.
Documentaries, anything. Yeah. And that's why when I read that Doordarshan has lost the only great interview of Satyajit Ray and Marlon Brando, or when Michelangelo Antonioni came and Kurosawa, it's very disheartening that we've never had a tradition of preserving anything to do with audiovisual heritage. And that's what the Film Heritage Foundation is trying to
We
say.
had the National Film Archives, which was run by P.K. Nair. You spoke about him
Yeah.
and your documentary on him and archiving. What was it not doing or not doing enough that you felt that there is more that can be done, which is why you created the Film Heritage Foundation 10 years ago, isn't it?
Right. I mean,
10 years ago to this
yeah,
year.
I mean, 2014,
Yeah.
we started the foundation. I think we've got to look at it in two different ways. One, we are talking about a country which produces 55 languages. 55 in terms of films, right? We make films in 55 languages. We are almost making about 2,500. If you look at the census certificate, there are many documentaries, short films. It goes into 20,000
Annually.
And there are big centers of filmmaking. You're not only talking about Bombay, but you're talking about Hyderabad, Chennai, Trivandrum, Bangalore, Calcutta, now pockets like Assam, Bhojpuri, Oriya, so Manipuri. The list is endless in terms of the big industry. How can one institution look after such a massive heritage? It was not possible for P.K. Nair in his time. And he, being the founder of NFI, he used to talk to me that one of his big goals was that every state should have their own archive and they should look after their own film.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen as such. So for us, it was almost inevitable to come because it was important to support what the government was doing, but to find ways in which we could also do. And that should be the aim of the government, that not only they are preserving or restoring, but they are also supporting institutions like us, which are also trying to restore and preserve a certain section of the Indian cinematic heritage. But we don't get that support. We do get a support from NFI in terms of loan and things. But financially, if you look at it,
you're a not-for-profit, obviously.
Absolutely.
You survive on donations, some of them individual donors, corporate donors.
Institutions,
institutional donors. Question is, so for instance, Manthan, right?
Yeah.
We all read and seen how Manthan was restored, screened at the Cannes Film Festival in the classic segment, and the kind of reception that it got.
Yeah.
And it then released here in India. What does it take in terms of time, in terms of money, to do that kind of work?
Yeah. So it all depends on the condition of the material. Now,
Sure.
if you look at our next restoration, which is going to be
The Odia film.
Yeah, that's Maya Mriga, which is the only film which Nirad Mahapatra made. But I want to tell you, since we started the foundation, one of our big goals was to look at restoring India's regional cinema. We were very clear that the true cinema of India lies in its regional cinema. The cinema which talks about its common people, its culture, its music.
And therefore the diversity and flavor of India,
is
right?
Now, all these films were produced in very difficult circumstances. They had very little budgets. They were all great films, and they are regarded as masterpieces. But the fact is that most of the material were in really poor condition. Maya Mriga was made when Nirad Mahapatra made it. He made it from the leftover stock, raw stock, and he didn't have money to pay for the whole film. So the kind of, if you look at the whole film, it's absolutely like jumping colors, it's kind of leftover stocks, the film made out of that. And then when we had to restore it, we found it in a godown because it had not been able to pay the deposit charges of a lab, and lab just threw it out. So we got it from there. It took us 3 years to restore it, almost frame by frame. I would say it's been the most challenging restoration because it had almost gone. It was very difficult, and then you need funds. Even in Manthan, I got the
print.
Which
was easier than that.
Manthan was easier because I got the print from Shyam Benegal in 2014, and then it was a year and a half back when we started the restoration. I knew that he's turning 90 and we needed to do something. He's very close by to my office. He's also one of the advisors of the foundation and the very first man to give us all his material to preserve. So when we went and looked at the negative, which was at the NFAI,
this is the Manthan negative.
Manthan negative. Yeah. It had green molds and there were a lot of fungus problems. Color had faded. We knew it's going to take a long time because we were working in Bologna and in Prasad, and it takes that much of time. But we were lucky that the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Federation, which is Amul, decided to support the project. And they came in, to help us with the restoration, and they came on. And they were clear that if Mr. Benegal wants it,
it'll be done.
It'll be done. Yes. We want to back this project. Yes, the foundation also contributed, but not all times we are lucky. Like Maya Mriga is all about, collecting money or asking for donations to preserve that film. Ghatashraddha, we are very lucky because we've got funding from George Lucas.
For that film specifically.
So at Lucas and Martin Scorcese's Film Foundation.
2 questions based on what you've just said. One is, can you tell us what it costs? Because people don't have any idea. That's one. So let's say Maya Mriga, if you were to...
No, I would say a great restoration. A great restoration. So it can range from any figure to any figure. It depends on the condition.
Sure.
But certainly 40 to 50 lakhs is what you really require. You need that, the way we restore.
So to be exhibited again.
Absolutely.
Right? In mint condition, as good as
it could go even more. Depending on if you do a big film like Pakiza or a Mughal-e-Azam or a Sholay, it could have, because of the length of the film, 3 hours, and depending on the condition and depending on what the material. But certainly between 40 and 50 is what you need
to get a very good quality restoration.
Very good quality and time-consuming restoration, which you are proud of. Restoration is an art form. In almost you're bringing it back the way the filmmaker had imagined, to his vision.
So how do you stay true to that? Because, for instance, when you think of color tones, like I have seen a lot of images that the Film Heritage Foundation has put up before and after. And you can just see, I saw Manthan. Manthan is also on YouTube, right? And you just see the difference. You can see the blue. So how do you know that this is the color, this is the tone, this is the exposure?
So it's very important to start the research first. I learned it the hard way. I was, the very first time I started working on a restoration where people will tell me Martin Scorsese is so particular about all his restoration, and they will talk about this film, Il Gattopardo, The Leopard, which Visconti shot that film. And there was these red roses. And every time they would grade the film and they take it to Scorsese because he was helping in the restoration, he would say, the roses don't look the way I saw it when I saw it in the theaters as a child, as a young man. And he was so particular about the way he thought it looked. And they had to match those colors. And that's how that. So I had that in my mind. And when I worked...
That's the gold standard.
Yeah, that's the gold standard. And when I worked on Kalpana with the Martin Scorcese Film Foundation way back in 2012, I saw the research Cincinnati did. She used to work in Bologna and she was handling that project. It was almost collecting documents, photographs, what it looked like, talking to people. And I think Manthan, we approached it very similar. Manthan, we started with photographs. There was a whole lot of photographs which had faded. It had almost turned orange. But there was a particular photograph of Smita Patil, which I found in that lot, which almost said the skin tone has... And I said, let's try and match it to this tone, because this was taken at the time of the shoot. And I gave them a reference, and we did a 3 minutes test. And I took it to Mr. Benegal and Govindanani. And I said, I needed a starting point to start the restoration. And I think when they saw that, they got so excited. They said, and they started talking to each other, where Shyam said that, Mr. Benegal said that, Govind, you shot it so beautifully, but we couldn't get that result because it was printed in a particular stock. And Govind said, yes. So it was, we realized, because the 70s was a time when there was an embargo
on film stock. Is it?
So they would get whatever they would get. They couldn't print. So they were very upset about the result. And when they said, this is how they imagined the film, and this is how, and then it was just easy after that.
So how come Martin Scorcese is so invested that he has a foundation that restores Indian films? So Girish Kasaravali's film will be next, Uday Shankar's Kalpana.
No, not only that, there'll be Days and Night in Forest, Arana Din Ratri.
Satyajit Ray's.
Yeah, that's the film we are working on it too.
So what?
And there are, Criterion is working on 4 Bimal Roy films.
So why is it not an Indian company that is investing in something like this? Is it the cost? It doesn't seem to be the cost.
No.
Because our big entertainment companies are really very, very loaded, let's say.
No, it's a long answer. It's an answer which stems from the fact that how passionate you are about cinema. Martin Scorsese and his foundation, they've got some amazing people working with the foundation, headed by Margaret Body, Jennifer Ann, and Kristen Marola. I think there is sense of the film foundation, which in their board has some of the greatest filmmakers, Tarantino, Alexander Payne, Christopher Nolan. Everybody's on their board. Coppola, Lucas. Their sense is, where did we learn cinema from? By watching these great masters. And if we cannot...
So it's homage, tribute.
And for the next generation.
Yeah.
So how do you not only preserve your heritage, and what Scorsese's foundation did was, they said, we should not just be looking at cinema from America, but we should look at all over the world. You can imagine the contribution of almost 150 films they've restored all over the world, whether it's African cinema, whether it's cinema from Sri Lanka, whether it's cinema from the parts of Europe.
So how these
like Parajanov.
So how did they come to these 3 Indian films?
So no, it all began. My relationship with them began with Kalpana. It was I was in my peak of my career, and I happened to go to Bologna to the festival Il Cinema Ritrovato, which is in June now, and I met them, and they were looking for something with Kalpana, because Pandit Ravi Shankar had told Martin Scorsese that you must restore my brother's film. And they said, we've been trying for 2 years and we've not been able to get any material on Kalpana. And I was just wondering that what's the problem? Because I was that time, so busy with making ad films and doing my own work. I never thought about preservation in that sense. But I came back to India. I went to Pune and I worked almost 6 months or even longer. I don't remember now. But to get them the only surviving print of Kalpana, which Uday Shankar had handed to P.K. Nair. And that's how the restoration began. And once that began and that journey began, we started partnering. And Martin Scorsese is a cinephile. He's crazy about cinema. And during COVID, we decided we'll do Arvindan. So he wanted to restore Thumb. And I wanted to restore, his foundation. And I wanted to restore Kumati. And
so
we interchanged. So we both got done. So we both did, but we partnered. And now they were very kind to partner again. When they said that one of the favorite films is Days and Night in Forest. And that happened because a board member of the film foundation, Wes Anderson, is crazy about Days and Night in Forest. Because his last film, in the end, there is a scene which is a homage to Ray. And he is mad about Satyajit Ray and his
Asteroid
film.
City.
Yes, absolutely. If you see, there is a... So we are now doing Arana Din Ratri with the Film Foundation and Wes Anderson. Wow. And that's how even Karishata is happening, because Lucas and his wife Hobson, they want to support that project. It's because cinema goes beyond borders. Cinema is not about it reflects the essence of human civilization
and the human condition.
And its times.
So specific to its time and culture, and yet transcending because
the emotion, because even for Scorsese, Lucas, Coppola, or Wes Anderson, it's the childhood memory. It's the childhood memory, because if you look at Scorsese's interviews, he continues to talk about that what I saw sitting in my home as a child on a TV when my parents would be.
So why is there no Indian version of Scorsese?
I don't think so. The people are that passionate in India as to almost contribute or to do. I wish there were filmmakers, there were producers, there were actors who would come forward and tell me that, I want to restore a Raj Kapoor film, or I want to restore Bombay Talkies film, or I want to restore
a Shantaram film. My God, those musicals.
It's almost a journey which began with ours, which was inspired by Scorsese. That's how I set out to do. The Film Heritage Foundation is an inspiration
from Kalpana.
No, from Film Foundation of Scorsese. Vijaya Bachchan suggested to me that why don't you start a foundation very similar to like what Scorsese has? And that's how I thought that we'll start a foundation which will start supporting.
But seeing the last 10 years, the kind of work that you've done at the Film Heritage Foundation, the fact that these movies are being released, that there is appreciation and there's some sort of education also that's happening. Are mindsets changing? Do you see a new generation of people who are valuing?
Yeah, absolutely. Rather when we screened Bachchan Back to the Beginning, or we did Dilip Kumar's 4 films, or Devanand's film, people did talk about the way it was released. It was in many cities, and people talked about how they all went and saw the film. But I think Manthan was a turning point for us, because in Manthan, people talked about the restoration. The feedback we got from people, they were aware of how the film looked, how it sort of looked, the colors, the impact of sound. When we didn't, sound negative was almost gone, and we had to, work on the sound. I think that level of almost people appreciating our work, and in that detail, it's like seeing a film and saying, who was the cameraman? Can we see the lighting? Yeah.
My God.
So that's how we got for Manthan.
It was stunningly
Manthan
beautiful.
was released in 51 cities, in over 100 cinemas, 101.
Did well
in
terms of the
absolutely
occupancy.
Extremely well. It was, I think, houseful everywhere.
Yeah.
So we'll try and release the film again, probably when Mr. Benegal turns 90. He's turning 90 in December. And what has Manthan done is that we have now been able to track Ankur and Nishant and Bhumika and Trikal. And so
it's like a feast.
Yeah. So
you've got a feast lined up.
It's what the impact of the restoration did.
Lovely. The restoration work that you're doing is for movies and films that were shot on celluloid. What happens in the digital age? What is the role of the archivist? Do you have a role? Because everything I'm imagining is stored in the condition that it's made.
No. So digital is what they call digital dilemma. It's absolutely... we were talking about tapes, Anuradha.
VHS tapes.
And VHS tapes. Yeah. And a lot of interviews you did.
Umatic.
Are they there? Do you also know about the hard drives which people tell you to preserve? Many times they just disappear.
Yes.
So digital has its own complexities, and they need a different level of preservation and meticulousness and how to preserve on a digital medium. And I think that is really challenging. That is something which there has never been a complete, like celluloid. I can take a Lumiere Brother film, which is 1895. I can go to scan the film and I can get the result. We know that it's been there. Celluloid is supposed to have lasted for 500 years. Digital, we're still experimenting. We're still trying to figure out what are the best ways. And then most of the digital tools are like your mobile, because they're changing it. The formats are changing. The conditions are changing. So I think the present digital is all for modern day consumption of quick, fast, and changing.
transient.
Absolutely. And that's brought the complexities of preservation. And I think that's the biggest challenge most conservators are happening. Because celluloid, we know, is tried and tested and we can preserve it because there is only one way to it. But digital is something which is changing. And we keep talking about what is the best format to preserve, because people say hard drive, LTOs, there are many other magnetic forms and things, but no clear definition has been given. So I would say the biggest challenge will be digital for us.
How interesting.
Yeah, and the amount of footage people shoot today.
You talked about your personal journey into becoming an archivist and this value for the past and what it can mean for us. How do you infect the general public with this? You know, I mean, we are a poor country.
Yeah.
And arts, the past, preservation, museums, everything in that region is associated with patronage, right? Patronage of the Zamindari family in one era.
Yeah.
And the corporate patron today, the government as patron. How do you ensure that the public becomes the patron?
Well, I think, you know, the idea of bringing back films on the screen is exactly that. That when people start, like that's what I said, Manthan was a turning point.
Yeah.
When people start relating with what was the past and what is today and how beautifully the film is restored, I think they start engaging with you. They start feeling that almost that they could contribute in many ways. They already contribute with emotions. But what we need is also financial support.
Yeah.
What we need is, in many ways, cinema was created as a tool for people. I mean, it was how Chaplin saw it as an immigrant art, and it sort of evolved as an artistic, expression.
Yes.
So, people's engagement and
to see value in it.
The value in it.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of evolving. It is a journey because it's been 10 years for us, where we started with the journey of saying that cinema is also as important as an art form, and you have to look at it as an art form. I think we've really evolved out of that. Now people are looking it differently, and they're looking at contributing to.
Let's talk about something that has happened recently,
Right.
and that is while you've been associated with MAMI, which is Mumbai's International Film Festival, you are now going to be the director of MAMI. What's the vision that you bring with it? How do you see where this festival is headed?
I think one of the key things of what the future of this festival will be is how to look at Mumbai city as well, because we are doing this festival in this magnificent city, and it's a sense we want to look at that. And more importantly, it's going to be a vehicle for independent cinema. We want to look at young filmmakers. We want to look at filmmakers of the future. I call it past, present, and future, because we're going to look at restored films. We're going to look at the films from around the world, which is going to be what happened in Cannes or what is going to happen in the festivals around. We're going to look at documentaries. We're going to look at cinema of the future too. And I think it's very important that we give expression to a young generation, to an independent generation, and a generation which can also speak their mind.
So I find it interesting that you say independent. That is the word that stands out.
I'm harping on it again.
So
I come from a very strong background of cinema learning from FTI. I almost adored my time in FTI. I saw some of the best of independent cinema. I saw a generation of the new wave. I admired so many people are close to me. And one of the very important aspects which I want to bring into MAMI in the years to come is that independence.
A bigger platform for independent cinema. So as someone who has attended MAMI over the years, and I remember one year MAMI didn't have any sponsorship, right? And a lot of it crowdfunded money. And what was very nice, and I'm still thrilled, I'm so thrilled with it, when they came out with the brochure, they printed the names of everybody who donated,
who contributed
right?
to the film.
And
yes.
I have that because my name was on there. So And that was a turning point for Mami. We had this predicament where you had this festival, which was Mumbai's International Film Festival, the center of India's, the largest center of India's movie making industry. And it was not able to support an international festival. Then things changed. You had the big corporate sponsor, and you had a lot of people from the mainstream industry coming in and sort of giving it the kiss of life. In administering that kiss of life, Shivendra, do you think that that independent cinema got neglected or got a smaller platform?
I think so. I think one of the most important aspects of a film festival is how to find its own identity of what are you really about. And it was a difficult time for Mami, and the changeover which Anupama Chopra did was tremendous because she came
and helped it survive.
Not only survive, but she gave it a platform. She gave it all. Anu is one of the most. I've had a wonderful relationship with her, and it goes also because I'm very close to Vinod Chopra and a great admirer. We are restoring some of the Vinod's films. Anu is one of the most sincere, one of the most beautiful people I know in my life. That I can reach out to her, I can talk to her. And I think the fact that they all felt that they wanted to trust me with this, and they knew my vision. They knew that I've always stood for, if you can see it in the restorations, the kind of films I'm restoring. They knew that where I'm coming from. My love for Hindi cinema is, of course, there, because I love Bachchans and I love that. But I think a festival has to be a unique identity. It has to be a unique voice. It needs to stand for something. It will find its sponsors because the sponsors are also looking for a young generation of filmmakers. If you look around you, the whole idea of how films are being conceived and made has changed. And what we are saying is that we're not going to give up the past. We're not going to give up the present. But we are also going to look at the future. And the future is in the independent's voice. That's how cinema is going to be viewed. While there will be the big studio films, but more and more Indians are winning in international platforms. I mean, in the last 2 years, you look at the Oscars, whether it was Shaunak Sen or Guneet Monga or many other filmmakers who were showing films in various festivals. I know so many festivals where some very wonderful films from the regional cinema was coming. Mami itself showed a lot of films last year, but we never heard about it. We didn't get to know about the diversity which Mami showed. I think now it's time for people to know the diversity within Mami, the range in Mami, and the voice in Mami.
Right. Independent cinema, you talked about international recognition. Payal Kapadia, you were there at Cannes when her film, got the big award.
Payal has that uniqueness of that voice. She's also from FTI. She's worked here in Dungarpur Films, the production house which she has. So I think it's clearly shows that these are the filmmakers of the future. And I've said Payal will be a very important filmmaker, not just in India, but around the world, because of her uniqueness, so rooted in the sense of what she's showing. And this was rooted in Bombay itself.
And difficulty for independent filmmakers to make films. When you talked about the Odia film that you're restoring and Nirad Mohapatra's story, it's just, making a movie is like an epic Herculean task, isn't it? Almost the stuff of legends.
But rather, when you see these films, these are the films which really reflect what is India, what is its culture, what is its people, what is really the essence of how different regional, portions in India have their stories to tell. It's about their stories. They don't seem to come out. We seem to not recognize them. And if we don't give them platforms, international, there are enough platforms.
But in India?
In India, if we don't give them platforms, if we don't give them that this is a platform within their own country. It's just their platform, and make them feel. Payal won the Grand Prix. We're so proud of her.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to see her also win in India.
Yeah. And also the film got made because of support from other countries which saw
Absolutely.
the potential and value in independent cinema.
So that goes for, all the filmmakers who are trying to make films in the future. I want them to feel in the years to come for Mami that they would like to enter Mami. I want them to feel that Mami will be their first option.
How lovely to hear that.
Yeah.
Also, Mami being Mumbai, Mumbai is where people come to make their fortunes.
Absolutely.
Independent filmmakers need to be able to feel
absolutely
that
not just from Mumbai, but also from all over, whether it's Marathi cinema within here or it's the Malayalam, Manipuri, Assamese. That's the beauty about cinema. It sort of binds you in its unique diversity.
Yeah. So it is so specific in terms of language and culture and region and time, and so universal in its emotional impact, isn't it?
It's just the word emotional.
Emotional.
That's what connects us.
So that's a good word to end this conversation.
Thank you.
We'll keep talking.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for making time.
Thank you for coming.